tons. It must have been 400 or 500 years old. I don't know, you know what I mean? But I can remember the exact same uh, relationship that the first Europeans had in describing this, because from the early journals, you know, as they described what Louisiana was, it was it was almost terrifying in its immensity, you know, and
especially on the North Shore, from what I understand. I mean, there were forests extended all throughout Louisiana, but the North Shore, specifically for some reason, this even in the Mississippi and up into, you know, up across the state line, just immense pine forests.
Yeah.
Just, you know, we don't get. I guess we don't get our name for it for no reason, piney woods. But I thought that was really fascinating.
the forests are all gone. What we're living in here is weeds.
Right.
You know, they took the forest and left us the weeds. Right. And we're too fucking stupid to understand it. And so you get all these assholes that say, "Oh, don't cut my pine tree, you know, because it's growing up in a live oak." You know, I mean, that's the only thing we got worth saving is our live oaks. Right. Only thing they left us in St. Tammany Parish, and this is not any ancient history. This went on in the lake until the 1980s, when a coalition of just grassroots, ordinary people got together and said, "Wait a minute, they are going to come and suck up everything in the lake." I mean, literally, they were going to suck up every last remaining shell in the lake and leave us with a big water-filled hole. When after they cut the trees down, now here's the thing that really sucks. After they cut the trees, they came back and paid us 50 cents a day to dig out the stumps, pull them out with oxen. Took the stumps and left us with holes. And that's part of why St. Tammany now has mosquitoes, which they didn't have before. Bad drainage problems. You know, I mean, these are the people that we're saying are in control because they have the money, they have the power, and they have had from day one. The first European trading company that ever formed was with the implicit and stated purpose of taking every fucking thing they could.
Trust me, I'm working for one right now. I know. That's why I'm getting out of that situation.
Who's that?
The Blossman family.
Oh.
Yeah. Feel sorry for me now. I'm getting out of that situation. I work for a beat brew pub.
Yeah.
And I've been there since the beginning. Whenever Jim and Ketch were great people. I don't know if you've ever met them before. Jim Patton.
I don't know anybody over
Jim
there.
Jim was and still is a hippie to the the heart of it, and he started this company by himself, along with one other person actually. Started a beat a beer, and let it grow to prominence, and then it basically, in a sense, was taken from him by this family, the Blossman family. Now he's in Florida, working at a brew pub down there, but I don't think I've ever really kind of gotten over that. And I stayed with the company because I needed to, money reasons.
Yeah.
But now I'm still in school and I can't work for them anymore. They own enough things in St. Tammany Parish, and I'd rather not. Kind of. But he Beat a Beer started in '86, and he just from the grassroots, and he was in. It was just a real good story, a story that was worthwhile and worth working for, and I really enjoyed working for him.
Yeah.
But that's kind of changed since.
Oh, that's a shame.
Well,
look, I give you my sad story. I set up Indian A. Jones Tour Company to take tourists during the Franco Fest on ecological, historical, and cultural tours. So I was with my cousin in New Orleans. She does a lot of genealogical research on the family through the archives and all. And she told me about our other cousin, who is a novelist, Anne Rice. That she has a Anne Rice tour business. So she gave me one of my other cousins' names, who runs the tours, Bill Murphy, and told me to call him to see about, how we could connect our tours together. And he had 26 tour operators, and he'd been looking to expand into St. Tammany Parish and so forth, and I could have given him the help. Except Anne Rice, 2 days after Mardi Gras, decides that she is not going to be in the tour business any longer because of the unappreciative SOBs, ignorant, hoity-toity, you name it, the whole clique of New Orleans. Here this woman who has written, she's a multi-millionaire. She doesn't have to put up with this shit, right. And they're giving her all kind of hassle on everything she's trying to do. She's just an ordinary person who's had a hard life, and had talent and used it to develop things and now wants to help, and I had the same goddamn thing happen here in Lacombe. Exactly same thing. I started Bayou Lacombe Crab Festival, for other people. After 10 years, I wanted to give it to the people after I made it a success, through good marketing, promotion, and so forth. So I had an advertising agency and a movie, cinematographic production, video production company. And, they got a lawyer and they sued me and took the Crab Festival for themselves.
The town, the Lacombe, what?
No, the two families. Yeah, really one person. Because all the others that are along with her, she's just using them, for her own purposes. And I'm in litigation. That's one of the reasons why I can't go ahead and finish my house. Is because I got money I would have used to, build my house, which incidentally is a Mayan Indian design, modified Mayan Indian. Yeah, if you got a little time afterwards, we'll walk around. I'll show you some of my ideas. But that's what I'm trying to do here, is to create a modified Mayan Indian representation of their civilization, with the Spanish influence, and to use this as a museum for Native American art, and then a bed and breakfast, because I'm right on the trace.
Right.
Trace is right there, and I see what the future has in store, and I'm planning for it. And so that's what I want to do, because I'm tied up, with them. And
the trace over in the beat is huge. I'm assuming it'll be just as big.
Oh yeah, it's got to be.
Very.
Got to be.
I never would have realized that it would have been as a big a production as it is. It's good that it came about though. I'm glad that they're using the old rail lines for something.
Oh, I am too. Believe me. I'm sitting right here.
Right.
I can see. I worked for Disney. I helped as a 20-year-old. I helped. I sat on the meetings when they were building Disneyland. Because I worked for ABC at the time, and ABC and Disney were connected at that time. So I was just an usher, glorified usher. Called you a page, wore uniform with a little thing on the thing,
Right.
Went around giving people orders. But we're putting on a production in theaters showing how Disneyland was being built. And we used to go out in front of the audience and we'd introduce ourselves and, you know, blah, 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 in each segment. Now, one would be Adventureland. So I got a hat, you know, a hunting hat, safari hat, and we'd all wear those as we, you know, gave our presentation. Then for Adventureland, we had a little helmet, you know, and it was just something cute about it. You know? And then one night I was standing in the back there, and I was telling one of my coworkers, I said, you know, I got three heroes that are people that I would like to meet in the 20th century. General Douglas MacArthur, Winston Churchill, and Walt Disney. And I was, you know, talking about it, and I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned around, and it was Disney standing. And I swear to Christ, I almost had a shit fit, you know, because I couldn't talk, you know.
Right.
He was asking me, and it's just like in a movie, you know. Yeah, I couldn't talk to them. I was so overwhelmed, you know. And he said, well, look, he said, I would like to have you sit in on some of our pre-production meetings. And I mean, I couldn't say anything. I just was mumbling. And about 3 months later, my boss called me and said, oh, shit, I'm done now. You know? And she said, Mr. Disney wants you to come over to, you know, the studios. So, I'm telling you, I learned. It was like a sponge, you know, sucking it all up. Because when you have that type of an opportunity,
Yeah.
so every meeting I'd go, and well, the first meeting he introduced me as the man who gave him the idea for the uniforms. You know, so because just because of the little shtick with the hats, you know, and because we'd wear a straw hat, a bowler. Anyway, he liked the idea, and what I found so great about the man, that with all these big, I mean, you know, really big, talented people, you know, he would always, you know, say something to me or ask me my opinion, you know.
He was a genuine person.
Yeah, really neat man, you know. And I can remember I had to work the opening of Disneyland. There were like 28,000 celebrities. Frank Sinatra and his kids. I mean, just everywhere you looked, it was, you know, it was Hollywood. It was Hollywood at its best.
Or worse.
The last, well, yeah.
Or best in this case.
It was the best because it represented a changing era. We were going from the celluloid to the electronic, and that's why it was very, very great for me because, you know, that was my degree's in communication, with my major in broadcasting. So I fed upon it, you know, and then I come here. Lacombe.
Yeah, the hotbed of communications.
Yeah. So, okay, now the lighting of the graves was a transference from the pagan way of doing it to a Christian way. And so in Christianity, everything vulgar was suppressed. See, that's why Martin Luther King, when he challenged the church and brought about the Protestant Reformation, it was over the rights of the people to read God's word, you know, and so they did not want it translated from Latin into the Vulgate, you know, because they were considered vulgar. So the Catholic Church Christianity in general, has been one of suppression. That's why when, we first attacked the Hawaiian Islands and saw these, women running around with just little grass skirts on, oh no, we can't have this, and suppress this. So you draped them, just like the Arabs, all the way down, So why that is with the European mind, I don't know. There is that inherent suppression all through. If you're a historian, if you don't know yet, you got to find out, because it tells the story of man. If you're interested in what you are and where you may be going, you have to know your story. You have to know your history for your own individual enjoyment.
Well, I'd definitely like to find out more about my family name specifically. I mean, I've got two branches. I have the Casmus, which is from New Orleans.
It's French, huh?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you look French. You look like a goddamn Creole. Boy, I could cast you in a movie quick.
I've got a lot of French in me.
Yeah.
My father's family. My father's side his name is Casmus, or a lot of people would say Camus. Right, because after Albert Camus, that's the first thing that Mr. Nichols says, Camus. I said, no, that's okay, but everyone else says it anyway. But the way my father's, most people say it Camus, but it's really pronounced Camis, because they're from the West Bank, and that's in Gretna. That's most of my family up there. That's how they pronounce it, Camis. I do have a lot of French in me. Mostly French from my dad's side. My mother's side has some Cherokee in it. Because they're from, but her maiden name is Goldman, which not really probably very much Cherokee in that, but they're from Mississippi, Carthage area, and I don't know. Somewhere down the line, she has a lot of Cherokee in that side of the family, although she doesn't really show it as much. Definitely, I don't. I have more French features. But it's definitely something I'm more interested in. It's just there's misinformation, a lot of misinformation in our family, because my father's the youngest of the children, and his father was a tomato farmer, and that was his main occupation. He was a tomato farmer, and he also grew mums for Easter, and that was basically what he did. It was his main occupation, and so he got hit a couple of times, because it's like an all or nothing thing. You can make a lot of money, but if you have a freeze and if you have something that goes wrong, you're screwed. And he had several breakdowns, and that was a really odd situation in that family. But so there's a lot of misinformation in my father's side of the family, that it's kind of hard to break through those barriers. You're not quite sure which bridge you want to cross and which one you don't want to, or at certain points, and it's probably not an appropriate time to. So there's a lot of things that I don't know about the father's side of the family. I know that they owned a plantation somewhere back down the line in Gretna, and they did own slaves, so they're probably part of that. I don't know if we're really that far back. I'd really be surprised if we were, but according to my grandmother, who's 90 now, she, I don't know how reliable her information is, but according to her, we have some pretty far-reaching. We go pretty far back. I don't know if we do as far back as the colonial era or not. I wouldn't think so, but you never know.
Oh yeah, you would. Have you ever seen the map of the plantations along the Mississippi River?
I think I saw one that Mr. Nichols gave me. Probably not a very good one.
I mean, what can you say? I mean, oh God. But this kind of shit went on all the time. I mean, Martin Van Buren, Andrew Jackson. Well, he loved Rachel. I got to give him credit for that. But she was basically an invalid. I mean, it's mentally, I think. So, but it's common to all eras and all of us, because we're humans. And I think that's just part of the human story, you know, the human existence.
I guess it's just natural for when you look back at history, you try to romanticize and you put these people on a pedestal and you realize that they're not necessarily should be on a pedestal.
Not at
although
all.
they should be, appreciated for the contributions that they did make. But I don't know. In a sense, it kind of makes them stronger for me because they're more human.
Yeah.
Because you don't think of Andrew Jackson as a,
man on a white horse.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Okay, so we're back on track here.
Right.
Okay, you got the purpose for the lights then.
Yes.
And that's
the connection
called,
between the sun and
right.
basically, how what they wanted. The purpose of the whole thing was for them to connect to the, their
Right.
past ancestors.
So that's why the Creoles, particularly in the Cousin family, Creoles, the Osseys, Ordon, to a less extent the Williams, Cazenave, Baptiste, Pierre, Ducry, all these old French names that they are descended from, are still being honored. It's not as if, oh well, they're old dead white man and I'm black, No, it's not that. They feel connected, and that's the legacy of Rouquette. To me, is that the tradition of an intense connection felt in an Indian society. This interrelationship, not only between humans, but between all living things, because all living things represented some face of the Lord or whatever. Everything had spirits to them. See, that's why I didn't want to use the word spirits, because spirits to them connotated a real physical presence. It wasn't as if it was not tangible. And that's where in modern terminology, spirit is looked upon as non-physical. So Rouquette, when they allowed him to view it, to understand it, he not only understood it but appreciated it, and wanted to allow it to continue by sort of coming out of the closet, where it could be shared, because the Indian by nature is a very giving, because they believe that since the Great Spirit is sharing everything with them, why should not they share everything with each other? And so that is the whole philosophy of interrelationships between the physical spirit world. Does that make sense? The physical spirit?
It does.
So when he realized that he could use this to, bring them into a more acceptable, presentable role in white society, that's why he, I think, developed this into a Christian.
Okay.
It was cleaned up. It was presentable.
See, that's where I was kind of missing the connection, is how it evolved from being just something with the Choctaw, how it moved from the Choctaw to being accepted in the Christian community,
Right.
And it was so.
Well, that's how it's able to make the transition.
I guess is it because there are similarities in the fact that in that particular custom and in the Catholic or the Christian religion, could you make is there connections to that, or?
Oh yes.
See, I'm not real. To be honest with you, I'm not really a devout I don't have a denomination.
I
You know,
understand.
I definitely believe in God and such, but I'm not familiar with all the customs of the Catholic religion.
I see. You
Even
were
though my
not
wife-
raised in any religion?
No.
Well,
I was baptized Catholic, but
Then that was about it?
basically.
Yeah.
My wife is Anna's Catholic, and you know she was raised in that, and she knows a lot more about the customs and traditions of the Catholic religion. But,
Oh, I see. Okay.
so that's
yeah.
why I'm a little bit gray on that
All right.
area. But
Well, let me go get some. See, Chalk is probably the most popular the most popular god of the Maya, because they were primarily agronomists. I mean, they developed all. You don't even want to get me started into the agronomy, of their culture, because half the world's food is Indian. Maybe more than half. But anyway, they light their cemeteries with candles. See, same as we. They decorate them and all. The Indians were very, very colorful people, and they were not suppressed, and their traditions have been carried over into Christianity here in Lacombe. And this is the only place, to my knowledge, other than Lafitte, down in Barataria, where we carry on this Indian tradition in the form of a Catholic ceremony.
Was it a smooth transition? I guess Rouquette he seemed like a very very talented man. To be able to, so I guess he was able to make a smooth transition from the way they practiced it to being accepted in the white man's world, as far as.
That is a good question. I think that it was a smooth transition as far as his relationship to them.
Right.
I think that they were just as willing to trust him. See, because once they allowed him into their souls, then he was allowing them into his. So that's, I think it was very easy for him to accept that, but there was some that probably were a little jealous, because, in the Indian society at that time period, there were shamans, who were the priests. My grandfather, I think, was a shaman, or at least he was a shaman to be, or what do you call it, an apprentice or something, because he died when he was comparatively young. So, the Indians do not think you really gain any knowledge worth having until you're in your 60s. So, it's just.
They actually valued their.
Right, they did. They since they were an oral history. You see, that's what makes doing research on my Indian family, or any type, very difficult, right? But this is something I use in my presentation. So now, you want to know about the Civil War? Are we through with the lights, or you have more?
Well, I guess it can wait till after the Civil War thing was just
No.
when they actually when it began in Lacombe as an actual as a Catholic, I guess.
I see what you're saying.
Because I want to make I want to make a connection between those two in my paper. And
That's a good idea. All right. The first recorded record, I guess, it's redundant, but the first apparent record that we have of the parish is in, I think, 1887. It was St. Cecilia, Then a church was built, or started to be built. And that would have been probably around the early 1900s. I can't really be sure on that yet. But by 1915, the church either was finished or almost, just had a few more things to be done to it. And then the hurricane of 1915 demolished it. Now it was located right there in front of where the Sacred Heart Church that burned recently, where it was. It was in front of that big oak tree with the cement in it, And then I'm compiling a history now on the Lourdes Shrine, so I expect to.
That would be the one over Fish Hatchery?
Right. Maybe you might like to work with me on this. Here's the deal. Lourdes Shrine was built in 1923 by Father Francis Ballet, who was Rouquette's successor. See, he was sent here because after Rouquette died or was incapable of ministering to him anymore, they had to use a priest from Mandeville, and they reflected, as Archbishop Blanc did. You asked me an earlier question about how he felt about it. There was also the taint of the church siding with the lower classes, particularly before the Civil War. They, just like any political organization, they had to play to the planters, and they were all for slavery. They were making millions of dollars, including Colonel Aicklen, Joseph Aicklen. I think his widow after the war sold the cotton for well over $2-3 million. That was big money in 1860.
Exactly. Inflation, put inflation into that formula now, it's probably $100 million.
Right. So I would think, though, that the transition would probably have been okay as long as he was alive. But I think it was harder for the Indians to continue doing this. But since they basically were off the beaten track anyway, just like I pointed out, for some reason, nobody knows about this, even though they do it every November the 1st, right there on the highway. I can't explain that. I don't know if it's like some protection or
I think it's good in a way, though.
It is good in a way. But
it maintains its I don't want to say antiquity, but it's I think when things stay small and kind of concentrated, then they don't lose their meaning, perhaps, or their worth. Just even in the sense of towns. See, I'm not from Lacombe. I'm from Abita. So most of my life I've grown up in Abita, and I'm seeing a lot of that now. It's you want to push, you want to keep pushing people out, because I don't want people coming into Abita, and I want Abita to keep its the Victorian style houses, just the smallness and the closeness of the town. You don't want people. You don't want 59 just businesses are just keep sprouting up 59.
I agree with you totally, but your rationale is flawed, because I know what you're saying what you want, but not how to preserve it, see? And that's the key. You're not going to resist the force that's coming upon you by pushing it away. It's not going to happen. The only way that you can really control it is to divert it around what you want to protect. I would like to see Lacombe as a living village that reflects the heritage from 200 years ago into the 1920s. That's how I look at it. Now, how to do that? Well, I've created a business plan to utilize the old houses that nobody wants. Nobody wants to live in them anymore because they're not modern. They don't have any of the amenities, and it would cost so much to do it. So my solution is to create businesses based upon the native arts, the native crafts, the traditional rural crafts, to not turn it into a Knott's Berry farm, but more into a Williamsburg, where the daily life could actually go on, but still be preserved. So I don't know if I'm going to be successful, but that's why I've got to talk with the Creoles. I'm going to Lafayette next month with Peter Kuzik, who's one of Father Rouquette's relatives. Peter's written a history, or hadn't written it yet, but I mean, compiled a family chart, something you ought to start doing if you're really interested in it. There's ways of doing it. If you're really interested, you can kind of get around some of the roadblocks in the family. But my concept is to preserve it by making it precious, making it appreciated. If it's ignored, it'd be just like an ostrich with his head in the sand. It's going to overwhelm. So if I can create through the internet, and I'm trying to devise a website right now, an appreciation by outsiders of what we have here, and then through education, through implication, motivation, inspiration, and perspiration, get the people who live here to also appreciate who they are, what they are, and what they can do, and how they can do it. So that's all a good marketing plan does. It has to fulfill all those requirements. And unfortunately, like I say, I've had it in place, had it in mind, but without the funding, which I was to get through the Crab Festival. See, that was to fund the museum, the Heritage Center, other things, just even a monetary fund, so that people with entrepreneurial ideas in arts and crafts could get money from this trust fund and maybe match it with, a personal loan or something, and create some businesses based upon the heritage, environmental, historical, and cultural. You see, you got it all. And we have a whole world that's waiting to hear our story. You talk about your professor being a storyteller. See, he's got to tell it to more than just his class. He's got to tell that story to the world, because this is our heritage. Even though I'm French, you Indian, I'm Indian, I don't know what other mixtures. We share that common heritage that is uniquely Louisiana. We have that responsibility to share that with the world. But unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of, a lot of problems along the way. But that's what I'm trying to find. So, Civil War. Rouquette, by that time, was still, he was accepted, but not fully trusted, because no matter what, the Indian, the black man, they all have a slang that goes, don't trust the white man.
Right.
I mean, you know, and it's not through prejudice, it's through reputation. It's
exactly.
through, you know.
You know, if it happens over 100 years, you know, you can't expect just to change like that your impressions of a certain person, even if it isn't supposed to treat everybody as an individual. When you have consistently a certain culture coming in and desecrating you, and you know, trying to destroy your culture, and it's kind of hard to trust that person.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm right on this, but it seems like I am, that there has not been one treaty negotiated between the United States government or any other European government with the Indians of any nation, of any description whatsoever, that has not been broken by the white man. I mean, I'm white, I'm Celtic. As a matter of, oh, that was your other question. It does go back in European tradition, the lighting of the graves. And incidentally, we call it les lumières de mort. You know what that means?
Lighting of the mort is dead, I think. So
Right.
Lighting of the dead.
The lights,
Up
yeah,
for
the
the dead.
lights of the dead.
Right.
Right. In Pátzcuaro, it's called Las Muertos, no. El Día de los Muertos, or Los Muertos. The Day of the Dead. So, because, I mean, they bring, I love what they do down in Mexico, man. I'd love to go ahead. Sounds like a real ass-kicking party, you know, because they get all their relatives, they decorate their bones, you know, dress them up. They, you know, these skeletons, they dress them up, you know, and they make fun of them, and they have a big party, you know. So I think all of that was part of the Indian religion, you know. The Indian religion was not a somber religion like, you know, Christianity or European Christianity.
Well, they had a big feast afterwards.
Oh,
Didn't
yes.
they? Yeah, because that's what I read, and that the first time he saw it, it was like he got there at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They would everything was being prepared, and once it started getting dark, they started doing the ceremony, but by 12 o'clock, I think it was ended, and then from 12 to 4, they just had a feast.
Is there? See, I don't know that description. Where did you read that?
In the same text, I'll have to.
Yeah,
make sure,
see if
know.
you can find it.
But that's what it said. Is that basically he walked from the Nook to the Bouchard village, and actually get crossed on the way. So one of the Indian elders had sent someone to come get him, but he apparently, you know, he put him in a spot, and he watched unfolded everything in front of him as they were preparing for the Day of the Dead.
Is that right? See, I never read that.
That's the reading. That's what I read just last night, actually.
And this was, who wrote it? I mean, who wrote the description? Was this Rouquette's description?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So he was telling this to someone.
Yeah.
You know, another thing I like, Lafcadio Hearn. You know who he is? Okay, Lafcadio Hearn was, well, I don't want to go into his life, but anyway, he was a writer. Mm-hmm. Wrote for the Item, I think, or whatever, in Father Rouquette's time. Okay. But he wasn't from here. I think he was from Europe somewhere. But anyway, Father Rouquette wanted to meet him, and so he wrote him a letter in the newspaper, which was like in a code, you know, that only a certain, not elite, but echelon of people would be able to understand. And so that's how they got together. And he used to come over here, and both were smokers. If Cadio smoked a pipe, he smoked cigarettes, which, you know, shows that he was still had that, some of that
Vice.
bad boy left in him
Had that
from, you know,
vice.
the younger days.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. So they used to sit and talk for hours, you know, and throw the matches on the floor from lighting the pipe, lighting the cigarette. You know, and in the morning, it'd be matches all over, you know. So it shows Rouquette was still intellectually hungry for his peers, which is, you know, interesting because it, like you say, it makes a person more human.
Yeah.
Realize the failings of them. But anyway, let's see what the Civil War, right? I understand that that's when even the most skeptical of the people trusted, because you know you can be Chataima in good times. You know, I mean, yeah, oh yeah, hell, it's fun dressing up, you know, in Indian clothes and going around and saving souls, and you know, well, when it comes down to really hard times, and that's when he came through. That's when he. Farragut uh, captured New Orleans. Uh, the lake was still contested in the beginning. You know, they still had the Confederate rams and some other gunboats. I can't remember. And they ran them up in the Tchefuncte River. You know about that? The Oregon, the Carondelet.
No.
Yeah, I can't remember the Confederate commander's name, but they evacuated Fort Pike. You know, in other words, for whatever reason, I don't know whether it was just incompetence or what, but they just walked away. You know, and anyway, so the Confederate commander ordered the rams brought up into the Tchefuncte River and burned. There's probably two gunboats in Bayou Lacombe. To give you an example of how many boats there are in the Tchefuncte River, from the bridge south is 42 that we know of. And upriver, I used to have a map of where the things were, because I understand at low tide you can still see them, you know. And there's one in the Pearl River, the Arrow. We know that was a Confederate gunboat, the Arrow. So there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of military battles over here. It was like skirmishes and jayhawkers, they call them. So every time so many jayhawkers would come through, boom, right over the Indians, you know. I mean, take whatever they had.
Right.
So, you know, and they'd kill you just for the fun of it because you were an Indian. Right. And of course, at that time too, they had some escaped slaves who had sought shelter over here with them. So they intermarried. And that's how you get a lot of your black genes in the pool here. Because, you know, while even during slave times, sure there was some, you know, runaways and all, but I think it was for the first time No, I can't remember that. Anyway, I'm sorry to keep getting off of the track.
Okay.
But, because like you say, your mind runs in so many different directions.
Right.
But there's my hummingbird. First one of the year. I'm drinking out of a little cute little bugs. Oh, okay. So the Jayhawkers were the ones that drove the Indians out of their camping ground. Right. And yeah, they did cluster around Rouquette on the plantation because, as a matter of fact, this was quite common among the Creoles. They afforded protection to the Indians, not just in Lacombe, but in Bonfoucat too. From the Jayhawkers on both sides, Confederates as well as Yankees. So the story is that he would row a boat, a skiff, over to New Orleans and pick up, smuggle, because there was a lot of smuggling going on there at that time. So, that's a good 16 miles just from mouth to mouth, plus, he probably had to find another way or a back route or something. You never know what went on. But that he was caught smuggling medical supplies over to the Indians.
I did read that. He got away with it though, didn't he? He knew Farragut, or?
Well, it's a story in Gone with the Wind where Rhett Butler is thrown into prison and is gambling with his jailers, and
They take all his money.
this was Rouquette's story. This is what happened with Rouquette. Remember, this boy was no fool. He achieved manhood on the West Bank of Paris with the card sharps. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He fleeced these guys. And it says, in the book that they contributed because of his persuasion. Well, I mean, it doesn't take two brains to realize what actually happened, So he not only was freed, but given a pass so that he could legally smuggle. I mean, that was basically, because, he did have friends. Now, I don't know if he knew Farragut, but it is quite possible. I don't know.
In the text I read that they alluded to the fact that he knew him because he met him up north.
That could be.
Strange.
That I don't know. Yeah, I never heard that. But I know he knew somebody in high places. Well, he knew the Archbishop, and even the Yankees. I mean, there were Catholics among them. I think Butler was a Catholic, actually. Ben Butler. You know who Ben was? He was a commanding general. They called him Beast Butler because he robbed the citizens. He was the first to really be blatant about it. I mean, it was just like any conqueror in history. You sacked the city. Right. I mean, that's what they were doing. They set up their military headquarters, and they, had quartermasters and all to go get, certain silvers. And I mean, they were systematic about it. Taxes, they could get property. Oh, they made billions of dollars, They were part of that. That's what's part of the problem in the South today. We're still suffering through the last dregs of Reconstruction. So. But let's see, what was your question? I got off on it.
We were talking about.
Oh yeah, rowing back. So yeah, he was freed and was then able to pretty much take care of the Indians because he was going to his own family's lands, So But then after the Civil War, they helped rebuild the village. And this is where I don't know where it was. Now, if you define headwaters as, up near Talasheep where it actually comes in spring form, that just doesn't make sense.
That'd be a really long walk.
Long walk, right. And so I think, in my opinion, it's got to be this ridge. See, the Lacombe Ridge goes from just about a quarter of a mile down from me, just down to the end of the street. That's where it comes out of Bayou Cypress, because Cypress Bayou flows along back here. So, and then this ridge goes and cuts across where Main Street is.
Okay.
So this was the most likely place that the Indians inhabited, was along this ridge. So I would put it somewhere up around the fish hatchery, right there by Jackson. I think it's called Jackson Creek, because Jackson was an old Indian, and Chavanette was another one, and they both lived up in that area. Jackson Road is, named for him. And they just built a new house up there, but it was on top of what was supposed to be an Indian mound at that point. So, and because of the oak trees and the character of the land, which would be good for hunting, and another part of it would be good for fields and farming and all. That's where I would think that it would be most likely. Like I say, they did move around. They would have a summer camp, down, where Gaylord's is, on the bayou.
Okay.
Okay, well, you're not from here. Have you ever gone water skiing on Bayou Lacombe?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, well then you don't know. But anyway, there's a hummock of ground out there, and there's an Indian midden, like just right down the bayou, walking distance. I still haven't found a trail though, but I may not ever, but I want to at least approximate where the trail would be from the Indian midden to this mound. It's beautiful. It's just covered with big live oaks, bayou flowing along, and they got a well, a flowing spring, and it's really, really nice. And now, of course, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service owns it, so we're hoping to help them clear it off. There's a lot of exotic growth that's come up. We got to get rid of that. But I would like to maybe one day have the archaeology department come excavate and see if they can.
They've never explored that midden?
The midden, yeah. Oh yeah, I've got pieces of pottery over there that I picked up there. I took the Chris Hayes, who's the regional archaeologist, young fellow. I took him over there as his first project when he first came to Louisiana. And he never did give me any of my pottery back either. Yeah, because in 10 minutes I found like 10 pieces. What they would do is they'd go out in their canoes and fish for the clams, the Regia clams. They ate those, you see. So they would bring them to a spot and open them up. I think they steamed them up, I'm not sure. But anyway, they'd open them up and throw them. So they would, sometimes this would take quite a while,
right?
Days. So they would camp at this high spot called Gaylord's, because the Gaylord Lumber Company used it. And they would, shuttle back and forth between it. They could bring the clams in by pirogue, and then carry them by basket up to the encampment and process them, which I imagine they dry them. That's what, because you couldn't keep clams very long, let's face it. But I find that interesting. not just the Paleo Indian, but just understanding how man evolved in and adapted in the environment, because they did very well, very, very well. Like I say, they had an eco-technology. Okay, but getting back to your questions, what others after the Civil War?
I think that we've covered that basically. Basically, you just said that Rouquette. That was the point in which they really truly trusted him because he was there for the hard times.
Yeah.
So in turn, Rouquette helped them rebuild the village after the Civil War. You said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so they kind of started.
Well, I mean, I don't know how he helped. Whether I'm sure he actually was out there.
But
doing,
they did rebuild it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they reestablished it. Yeah, right.
And from that point, their village lasted. They didn't have any more significant problems, any changes.
Oh, yeah.
When was the next significant?
Oh, well, I think it was 1902 that the two New Yorkers, I think they were New Yorkers, they were from up north, came down here, saw all this timber, and said, well, we got to deal with so-and-so, whatever it was. However, they got this public land, because this was all public land. It was obvious through Reconstruction, we were under military occupation for 16 years. It's a long time. So they were able to set up whatever mechanism they needed to deplete this area of the resources, even up to and including the shell dredging in the lake that we stopped through Save Our Lake back in the 80s.
Right.
That's a whole nother story. But they had enough time to entrench themselves in government, whether it was Southerners, scallywags, they were called carpetbaggers and the scallywags, right? I mean, those who were real people in there, doing real things. And as a matter of fact, I think that part of the family that was recruited to bring the railroad through here were recruited by this corporate entity up in New York, or at least in the Bogalusa area when they established the mill there. Obviously, these two guys had to hire people,
Right.
And people who were willing to subjugate the people that had been freed from slavery. It didn't end slavery. The Civil War did not end slavery.
Right.
Slavery was transferred from southern hands to northern hands, basically how it worked. So they still had to have overseers. They had to have slave drivers. They had to have people in judgmental positions in the courts and in government. So, if they were to receive the benefits of their victory when they defeated the South, they had to set all this mechanism up. And Louisiana, being the richest state, we had all of those vast swamps full of enormous cypress trees.
Wow.
To read Bienville and Iberville's description of the Man Shack Swamp. There's somebody you might, if you're interested in that at all, Dr. Richard Conrad at LSU. He's, I don't know what he is, but he's written a lot about the ecology of the area back 300 years ago when Iberville first saw it. And of course now look at it, it's just cut off. So I think that that was the way they structured the power. It was always maintained from up east somehow, and so they came in and cut all the trees. And the Indians, they just watched them. Yeah. Because that's all they could do. I got a mural I designed in the museum. Have you been in the museum yet?
No, I haven't.
You ought to go up there. It's only open from 2 to 5 on Sundays.
Right.
Yeah. It's old ladies. They don't know anything really about the museum. They clean and they dust, and they can tell you maybe a little bit about their particular past, but they can't give you a clear idea. But the mural depicts Lacombe along the bayou around the turn of the century and the transition with the railroad coming through and cutting the forest and the old Indians standing there just watching. Because that's all they got from it. And they were also got, just like your wife's parents who were in Oklahoma, that was not the original grounds for the Chickasaw. They were forced over.
Right, they were moved over there.
So as late as yeah. So as late as the turn of the century, Congress passed another removal act, removing the last remaining Choctaws in Lacombe off of the land so the railroad could come in and devastate it. That's why we left with all these loblolly and slash pines, because they took 90% of the southern forest. 90%. Didn't reseed, They'll say, I've heard them saying something, well, at that time we didn't know about it. For Christ's sakes. The Indians knew about it thousands of years before that.
They knew about it, they just didn't want to do it.
No, of course not. So, the last remaining Indians in Lacombe was a man named Sandville Johnson, whom I met when I wrote this book. And boy, he could tell some stories. And a lot of these people can tell stories about it. Because, there was a lot of outlawism, outlawing, whatever you call it, over here in those days. Real bad. Cattle rustling and knifings and shootings, And I knew this old black man who ran a bar room back in those days. He was about, I guess he died when he was almost 90, And I used to sit out on his front porch with him in an old chair, and he'd tell me stories about Lacombe and the black people and all of the things that went on and who was related to who and who didn't want what known and all.
All the gossip, huh?
Oh yeah, gossip. Man, I tell you, if Lacombe could bottle gossip, we'd be a millionaires.
I know just even from modern gossip, much less historical. You can't tell one person look at anything if you don't want everybody to know.
That's right. Well, that's why don't edit these tapes. Keep them with all the profanity and all that, because that is how people talk, and I think it's necessary to record how they talk.
I agree.
So. As a matter of fact, through the museum, I started a program in 1990 to record all these old people, oral history, and we did pretty well as long as they had somebody that was paid to do it, doing it. It was part of a state grant or something. But now there's no one, so we're trying to build this up again by going directly with the Creole into the Creole community, because, of course, a lot of the people here trust me. They know who I am and what I'm trying to do. But there's still suspicion of any white face, So if we can get their people to get their story before it's gone. And so many of these people have died since I've been around, you know. And I always, their family or, you know, family member or son or whatever will always say, oh, you know, if you had just been able to talk to my mama, she knew all that. And, but they don't. It's all gone. The language, you know, is disappearing. The, just so many things. I guess this is all part of evolution. I mean, you know, you can't save everything. You'd be buried in our own garbage, which, of course, we are in Louisiana anyway. So, what else you got?
I think that's about it. I got giving me the background that I need, and also just the connections, which is the important part for me.
Okay, well, I gotta go take a leak, so
Okay.
you think on it. If you,
All right.
you know, have any more, we can walk around. I want to show you.
Yeah, that sounds
some,
good.
doing